while some online bullion dealers continue to charge almost $2 over spot for 1 ounce silver rounds, SD Bullion is selling 1 ounce silver rounds at only 49 cents over spot on any quantity. Again, that's $9.99 fine silver for just 49 cents over spot for any quantity. If you haven't joined the over 40,000 precious metals investors by making the switch to SD Bullion, what are you waiting for? You could save hundreds or even thousands of dollars on your next order. SD Bullion, the lowest prices, period.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with SilverDoctors.com, and back with us today is Rob Kirby from Kirby Analytics. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be with you again, Elijah.
Now, I normally would say all right, but right now in the world, it doesn't seem like everything's all right. There's huge geopolitical tensions right now. You've said we're redlining. There continues to be tensions with North Korea. Trump recently, just yesterday, said, this is a quote, "North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen." And then North Korea's military is considering sending missile strikes at the U.S. territory of Guam. Now, I guess, did you want to share your perspective on just the craziness that is going on in the world right now?
Yeah, Elijah, as we commented pre-interview, it just seems to me that the reactions that we are seeing in our capital markets against the backdrop, this very dangerous geopolitical situation, the capital markets reactions we're seeing are extremely incongruent with the severity of geopolitical conditions. Specifically, let's speak of the equity markets. I think the Dow Jones is having a hard time going down even 100 points. The VIX, which is a broad measure of volatility in the markets, it's higher today than it was yesterday, but that being said, the VIX is currently at 12. Its 52-week range is 8.8 to 23, and today it's at 12, and that's up 10% from yesterday. But all I'm saying is that given the amount of geopolitical tension that we see in the world, the VIX is acting in a very counterintuitive fashion. One would expect, if one is to believe fundamental economic theory, one would believe that such geopolitical tension would have the VIX trending towards the high end of the 52-week range, and currently it's drifting at the bottom. We've seen little to no reaction in the precious metals. We've seen a somewhat of a rally in the U.S. Government bond complex, with the 10-year yield going yesterday from 228 down to 221 this morning. That's typically sold as a flight to quality trade, with the which may or may not be believable. The U.S. dollar index up maybe a half a point in today's trade versus yesterday. I personally don't buy into this flight to quality or any semblance of a strong dollar, given America's fiscal position and their debt load. But I guess another thing that I'd like to really stress or make a point of, what is underlying this counterintuitiveness reactions that we're seeing in our capital markets. It's all related to algorithmic or program trading. And what algorithmic or program trading is basically where phantom volume, or I'm going to call it non-productive volume, is created in computer trading, where vast volumes of computer-generated trades create a flow. And they create a flow that is so big relative to the real business or the underlying constituent, like in the case of precious metals, the amount of paper precious metal that trades relative to the amount of physical precious metal that trades would be something akin to creating a river of trade, like the Niagara River and Niagara Falls in paper trade for gold, where you've created such an obscene amount of artificial volume in paper trade that the underlying physical trade in gold amounts to a barrel in the river. And if you throw a barrel into the Niagara River, the barrel is going to go with the flow of the river, and it doesn't really matter what the constituent of the barrel is or what the relative value of the barrel is or how rare the contents of the barrel are. The barrel go where the river takes it. And this is what algorithmic or program trading has been harnessed to accomplish, which is namely the suppression or the rigging of our capital markets. And basically what it really amounts to is central planning, because much of this program trading is directed by the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, acting in conjunction with the Federal Reserve to achieve predetermined outcomes in our capital markets. This is why we have a VIX trending at the low end of its 52-week range against a backdrop of unprecedented geopolitical uncertainty. This is how, by the way, we've managed to get interest rates at zero by creating effectively through program trade and through derivatives trade to create, let's just say, phantom volume in the U.S. government or debt complex to make banks captive buyers of U.S. government debt to force rates to zero. And this has all been achieved through interest rate derivatives on the interest rate front. It creates phantom volume on the equity front to keep the equity prices inflated and robust levels. And these are all trades to shape or form perceptions in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of the investment community that all is well when all really isn't as well as it's being painted to be.
Right. I remember reading a headline, something like, and this was today, something like, the Dow falls 50 points after Trump's North Korea comments. And it's like, falling 50 points is nothing. It's like 0.3% or something like that. So what is your perspective? It seems like people are completely oblivious to, you're saying that the markets are completely managed and manipulated. It seems like, I don't know, why aren't people talking about this manipulation more?
To be honest with you, Elijah, I guess really what it really comes down to, most people are not going to complain about a stock market that's higher than it should be, because most people have some sort of either direct or indirect ownership in the equity markets. If you have a pension, if you have an IRA, or if you have direct investment in the stocks, you're never going to complain that the stock market is too high. If you own a house, you're never going to complain that your house value should be lower. If you're in debt, which most Americans are, record amounts of debt, and here too in Canada, consumers are carrying unprecedented amounts of debt versus historical norms. And who's going to complain that interest rates are low when you're saddled with a whole pile of debt? And then further to that, I would suggest to you that the biggest debtor, of course, in the world is the American government. And the American government cannot afford to pay market rates of interest on the debt that they have. So, to speak directly to your question, why is it people are oblivious to it? To the rigging that goes on in our markets. Well, people, for the most part, are act oblivious to it, or dismiss the notion that things aren't as they really should be, because they stand to gain from the market manipulation. And that amounts, or to me, what that amounts to is a beggar thy neighbor policy, because the fact of the matter is, putting rates at unrealistic levels and assigning such a cheap value to capital is in contravention with natural laws. I mean, capital is finite. Whether we want to accept it or believe it or actually state it, capital is finite, and acting like it is infinite is not a sustainable program. And such a course of action as acting like capital is infinite and has a zero cost brings very, very, very bad outcomes because it encourages or bad asset allocation and a very, let's just say, a very tawdry approach to allocating what is finite resources. So, and this really is a pretty good descriptive and picture of our world today, that we have finite resources and capital being assigned to and allocated to, let's just say, less than worthy endeavors.
Now, I know that you've said that Bitcoin is really, and cryptocurrencies are markets that aren't manipulated, and really they are a window to what, precious metals would be doing right now if they weren't manipulated. Now, we recently just saw on Saturday Bitcoin jump above $3,000. Did you want to give our viewers an update on your perspective on the market trading in Bitcoin right now and how it reflects really a truly free market?
Well, let's just say the VIX measure that I spoke of just a little bit earlier does not include, let's just say, the price movements in Bitcoin. If one were to assign a VIX measure to Bitcoin, I would suggest to you that the VIX for Bitcoin, instead of being 12 in a 52-week range of 8.8 to 23, which is the current level of the VIX versus its 52-week range, if one were to take the VIX of Bitcoin, I'm going to suggest to you that its range would probably wouldn't have a low of 8.8. It might have a low of 15, and it might have a top end of 40 or 50, and it would probably be trending at the top end of its range right now. And the reason why Bitcoin trades this way is because there is no futures complex for Bitcoin. There is no options complex for Bitcoin. Central authorities cannot sell Bitcoin that does not exist. Therefore, they cannot control these breakouts, because you see, what Bitcoin really represents, or what it represents to me, is an anti-dollar trade. And what it represents is people who feel they have too many dollars, who are looking for alternatives that should react favorably in the face of monetary debasement, are turning to the cryptocurrencies for the simple reason that they cannot be shorted or controlled by central authorities. And this is why their price movements have been so pronounced and directionally, let's just say, upward and to the right. I expect this to continue because monetary debasement continues unabated, and the notion that these cryptocurrencies can be controlled is, I'm just going to say, the jury is out on that, because we did have a recent SEC pronouncement regarding the cryptocurrencies, and specifically relating to ICOs, which is initial coin offerings, where the SEC had made some sort of a pronouncement that they view a lot of these ICOs as securities transactions. But in saying that, they also did make a statement regarding Ethereum and Bitcoin, saying that the securities moniker doesn't apply to them because they view those as currency. So, I mean, for officialdom to control the cryptocurrencies, it's going to take it's going to take some pretty monumentous pronouncements or new laws, or structurally things will have to change, and I don't see them changing. But in any case, at least in my view, the cryptocurrencies are showing us what basically precious metals should be doing and would be doing if they were in a free market where the rareness of precious metal and the rareness of the underlying physical metal was allowed to express itself in a free market fashion. So I view the cryptocurrencies as being a big spotlight, which is being shone on the fraud that's occurring in other areas of our capital markets. And it's my hope and my belief that this will lead to, at some point, greater transparency and freer capital markets, particularly in the precious metal space, and hopefully in the interest rate area as well.
Now, moving to viewers' questions, this viewer is wanting to know if precious metals do go parabolic or there's some sort of black swan. What are your thoughts on what will happen to the miners, and do you think there's a threat of nationalization, nationalizing mines?
I think the threat of nationalization of mines in many jurisdictions is very real. Under a scenario where the underlying price of precious metal goes parabolic, yes. And if they aren't directly nationalized, I can well imagine that governments in different jurisdictions would be very inclined to put surtaxes or windfall taxes on the capital gains that shareholders might be getting if their stock prices were allowed to rise to reflect a much higher precious metals price, because any scenario where the price of precious metals goes absolutely parabolically up would generally imply that that government finances, whether it's the U.S., Mexico, Canada, you name it, but it would generally imply that government finances are much worse condition than they were formerly. And when governments are short of money, the first place they go to look is to people who have money or who have just made money. And under such a scenario, I could see them effectively scapegoating and trying to lay off blame for the state of their finances on the people who have benefited from, or in their sense, they probably would try to describe it as they would make the precious metals investors out like they were robber barons, and they've had more than their fair share, and whenever governments start talking about fair shares, it's a good time to hide your wallet.
All right, moving on here to the next viewer's question. This viewer is wanting to know, do you believe the SDR will replace the dollar as the world reserve currency?
I am not sold on guffaw about SDRs. In my view, anyway, all this talk about SDRs is about as intelligent as I don't know. To me, it's a ridiculous argument. It's just a complete ridiculous argument. And let me just express it this way: what a movement towards SDRs would do, effectively, it would reward the people who have taken the world's monetary edifice to the brink and run it up on the rocks, and to move to a system that's SDR backed or based would, in my mind, effectively amount to a do-over. It would be like saying to the people who've destroyed our monetary affairs, you guys have done such a pathetic job, you've done such horrible work, we're gonna let you guys start from scratch again. And you know what? I don't think the global population is going to have the stomach to allow the clowns that have perpetrated this financial horror on humanity to let them just have a clean slate and a do-over. So to me, that's just a dog that doesn't hunt.
What do you see happening? Do you see the populace then turning back to gold or something like Bitcoin?
Well, look, it may very well be a crypto solution, but even if it is a crypto solution, I do believe that it will be backed by tangibles. And at the head of the list of tangibles, I would place precious metal, gold, silver, and there may be an energy component, and there may even be a food or an agri component. But I would look for any replacement to the current monetary order or regime to be something that is tangible backed, and if blockchain was applied to a tangible basket, it would at least in my view, it would give the backing credibility, in that the blockchain technology does not allow for the let's just say the malcreation or the debasement of the basket the way our current fiat regime is operated.
All right. Well, we have one last viewer's question, and this one is from Jonathan. What's going to happen in a dollarized system like Ecuador or El Salvador when the US dollar finally loses reserve currency status or collapses in value?
Well, I mean, ultimately, this is a comment I hear a lot. People who say, "Well, you think the dollar is going to crash?" And people for some reason, Elijah, seem to leap to the conclusion that if the dollar loses reserve currency status, that commerce and business stops, and that's not the case at all. Look at what happened in countries, for instance, like Zimbabwe. I mean, Zimbabwe had a currency that became unfunctional, and commerce didn't stop in Zimbabwe. You can, for instance, you can always revert or resort to barter, or you can revert to systems of trade that don't necessarily have to involve a fiat currency. There may be a crypto solution, and crypto solutions can be adopted quite quickly. So the whole notion that if the dollar loses reserve status, that commerce stops, or that countries would be in a situation where everything would stop, that is another dog that doesn't hunt. Humanity has need for goods and services, and humanity will always find a way to conduct trade in goods and services. And replacing dishonest currency with an honest medium of exchange, by and large, benefits most of humanity. The only people that really get punished from honest money are the people who benefit from dishonest money. And that means a whole bunch of people who are the elites, the central bankers, the politicians are the ones that likely stand the most to lose from honest commerce. And you know what? If they happen to lose a little bit, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
All right. Well, Rob Kirby, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Yeah, you can find me online at kirbyanalytics.com. And, my parting comments would be you still need to remain, even though it's been a tough ride, you got to remain long physical precious metals. And I would say keep an eye on the cryptocurrencies, because they may just be, the way forward, and you might just find that the cryptos do adopt a very, very strong element of precious metals backing or involvement. And I look forward to watching this all develop.
Once again, Rob Kirby, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.